the boundaries, which I so admire, so respect. Can you talk about how we've gone from this what we learned from the bond, and then of course took with the field and the intention experiment, and here we are now, Power of 8. Can you talk a little bit about that? So how this is so much more than just being
No, absolutely, Cynthia. Well, I'm sure like you, I've just done work to, my work has really fed my own enthusiasms or questions. And so after the field, which was essentially, I started writing that just to find out why things like spiritual healing work. How can you have a thought and send it to someone else and make them better? That was my initial question, because I'd seen some very good studies showing that this stuff works. And so I thought to myself, well, if that's the case, that undermines everything we think about how the world works. So I set out to find that by talking to frontier scientists. What I didn't expect is that they would be describing experiences and experiments that were, when compounded together, represented a total revolution in science and a revolution in the way the world works and the way we work. But there was that unfinished business, as I said, when I finished it, thinking, well, how far can we take this idea that thoughts are things that affect other things? So that became the intention experiment. And then with the bond, I think I wrote that for two reasons. One, I did not believe that we were born to be competitive. With all of everything else I've discovered, Darwin seemed wrong. He seemed wrong, this whole idea of survival of the fittest. So I wanted to see that, but I also was curious. Lots of people have said to me, yeah, I like the field. How do I live this? So that's always a mistake to ask a journalist. I even did a whole course. We even put together a whole course, 48 parts, 1.5 million words to answer that question, called Living the Field. But the bond was really about how to live that, and really to say, well, were we meant to be competitive? Were we meant to be clustered? And I found so much evidence that we need to belong more than we need to eat, essentially. They find that with suicides, the main reason they kill themselves is because they suffer from what psychologists call excessive individuation. They feel left out, and being left out is something that the human spirit cannot bear. And conversely, the studies of groups, I was really amazed to see about the Japanese, because the Japanese smoke like chimneys, but they don't suffer from heart disease until they transplant themselves to a society like America. And in that instance, some transplants, then begin to evidence the same rate of heart disease as typical Americans, but some don't. And so when epidemiologists have looked further, what they've discovered, to their astonishment, is that it really doesn't matter what these guys eat. They can eat Big Macs and fries or tofu and sushi, but it doesn't matter. What matters more than anything else is whether or not they're able to recreate the close community ties that they had in the old country. And if they can, they don't get heart disease.
See, this is what I love about your work. And then you also took that further with the Rosito effect. And these are Italians eating. Maybe I should let you tell the story.
Sure. This was an extraordinary study that was done a while ago. And it was done in Roseto, or I think Roseto, Pennsylvania, where it had been a batch of transplanted Italians. And they worked down the mines. They had terrible jobs. They ate food that was, cooked in lard. They shouldn't have been anywhere, near as healthy as they were. But when epidemiologists looked at and studied their rate of heart disease, they found that it was absolutely close to zero. Yet, just all the neighboring towns around them had very high levels of heart disease. So when they looked a little further, they realized that what was going on there was something pretty extraordinary, which was this sense of close-knit community. Rich or richer lived cheek by jowl to people who were poor, and people did not flaunt it, but they did do a lot of things to promote the beauty of the whole community. They looked after each other. They had second, third generations all living in the same house. They were really close-knit, and it showed in their heart disease, and that's what the Rosetto effect is. But then when the younger generation started moving out and not staying in the same close-knit community, and when they wanted to, move out to the further suburbs or transplant across America, then that close-knit community broke up, and the heart attack rates started mimicking those of the neighborhood towns and the rest of America. So it was all about community. It didn't have anything to do with the food. It had to do everything with community.
And then the time is going so fast, but I want to definitely ask you about the work you've done studying the human energy field, and then touch on maybe the German physicist Fritz Albert Popp that you mentioned him in Power of Eight. What's most important for us to realize about energy, about this body of work, sort of in a nutshell? Key ideas.
Well, that we are not just a collection of chemistry and electrical signals. I mean, what we find is that we are, at our hearts, human beings and all living things, are vibrating energy, and we're trading information and energy all the time. In fact, we're trading light. I mean, the extraordinary work of the late Fritz Albert Popp, great genius, German physicist, discovered that all living things are sending out a tiny current of light, and that light is being beamed back, almost like a conversation in light, by other living things. They're sending things back synchronicitously. We also found that this light is coming out of DNA, almost like the master orchestrator of the body. So it's not too far-fetched to think that energy thoughts are yet another energy, and that they are trespassers, essentially. They go into other people and things, and that we have to understand that, I always like to call us leaky buckets. We're leaking out all the time. And so what a lot of my work now is all about helping people focus their attention on their thoughts to send out the right leaky water, basically, to send out the right message. So, what we're really realizing, too, is that consciousness is not locked inside our heads. Consciousness does not equal brain. It is also a trespasser, and that we access it, essentially, through our brains. Our brains are like a television set and a television station all at the same time. We're sender-receivers, and we're sending out all the time. We're receiving all the time. And so consciousness is much bigger than the brain. And so what we're all learning how to do with this new science is to really make full use of that and fulfill our total human potential and the amazing potential we have with our minds to change the world, to heal the world.
Which brings us, sadly, to the end of this show. I just have time I'm going to combine two questions. So how can someone start a Power of Eight group in their community, and how can they find out more about your work and get in touch with you and stay in touch with you?
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, first of all, the Power of Eight book itself has all the instructions you need for how to set up a group. And if you can't find 7 other people in your neighborhood, if you join my website, lynnmctaggart.com/forum, there's a whole section there where you can join an existing group, and there's thousands of them, or advertise for a new group yourself in your time zone. And if you join my community, lynnmctaggart.com, you'll not only be part of Intentions of the Week, but also you can join our intention experiments. We're planning a great big one. I've been using intention experiments recently to end polarization, and we had a recent one where we had Arabs and Israelis intending together, and at the end of it they sent love to each other. It was really extraordinary to see. And the Arabs were from 8 different locations, the Israelis from Jerusalem. And, our next one, we're looking at trying to bring together Republicans and Democrats and show them that just this one thought can heal these kinds, and this one action setting intention together can heal the biggest divisions. So we have that, and we have other big intention experiments planned. So join my website, lynnmctaggart.com. Intention experiments are always free, and you can also find out about my year-long master classes, which I do every year, and our special retreats. We've got a retreat coming up in end of September for a week in 8 days into October in northern and central Spain, Cynthia. We're going to have people stay for 8 days in 2 different monasteries where there's been a lot of evidence that sacred spaces have a real resonance effect to aid intentions. So we're going to be going very deeply with people.
That was something I was going to say when we were talking about Stonehenge, but there's too much to cover. Your work is so phenomenal. I feel like it's a future of our planet. So it's time to end the show. So I'd just like to thank you so much and invite all of our listeners to keep asking my favorite question: how good can it get? Until next time, this is Cynthia Sue Larson, today with Lynne McTaggart.
Thank you for listening to this edition of Living the Quantum Dream with your host, Cynthia Sue Larson of RealityShifters.com. Join Cynthia next time in visualizing and accessing whole new worlds of possibility on Evolutionary Voices for the Quantum Age. Heard Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Eastern on the Dream Vision 7 Radio Network.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.